Welcome to the Redirect Podcast. My name is Abigail Humans.
And I'm Emily Rojas. The Redirect Podcast is a show where we shift the conversation back to books. We discuss themes from some of our favorite fictional books and how those themes show up in real lived experiences.
On today's episode, we'll be comparing two books, one fiction and one nonfiction, centered around the Bachelor franchise. People are saying it'll be the most dramatic episode yet.
And today we're going to be talking about Bachelor Nation, a nonfiction book by Amy Kaufman, and the book One to Watch, which is by Kate Stayman London. And both of these books comment on the Bachelor franchise in a little bit of different ways. But Abigail, can you give us just a primer on The Bachelor for anyone who is somehow unaware of what it is?
Yes, in case you have not been watching network television in the last 20 years. The Bachelor franchise is a series of 2 or 3 main dating shows, competition dating reality shows on ABC. There are 19 seasons of The Bachelorette, 20 seasons of The Bachelor, and there have also been multiple spin-offs, including Bachelor in Paradise, which is currently running, Bachelor Winter Games, and Bachelor Pad. That those shows are cast from contestants who were not selected on the main Bachelor and Bachelorette shows. So it's a primetime ABC show. The typical contestant is usually, for women, I would say 22 to 30, thin, white, usually, unfortunately, an overwhelming number of white women, and white men too. Not a super racially diverse show, not a show with really any size diversity. These are your average heterosexual, cisgendered male and female contestants. And, you know, they typically have jobs like big roles like working in recruiting or marketing, sales, things that really they don't want to stay in forever. And that's the true reason they're on the show. It's to build a social media following and to create a platform for themselves.
Yes, they have jobs that hopefully they never have to go back to.
Yeah, that's really the goal. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody who has a real profession, or quote unquote real profession, who will be a lawyer, a doctor, a veterinarian, something like that they are committed to going back to, but that is not the norm.
Correct. And so when did you, I don't know about for you, when did you start watching the Bachelor franchise? Because, of course, we are doing this because we're both fans ourselves, and I feel like sometimes when people don't watch The Bachelor or Bachelorette, you kind of have to defend yourself to them. You kind of have to explain. So what's your story? How did you get sucked into this terrible franchise?
Yes. So I was not allowed to watch the show when I was like in high school or middle school. That was not allowed in our home, and probably for good reason. I didn't start watching until college. So for those who are familiar with the show and are longtime watchers, my first season was Ben Higgins' season of The Bachelor, which was, probably in 2014 or 2015 when I was in college. So that was my first season, and I've been watching it ever since. But really, the reason I started watching it was because my friends were watching it, and it was something to talk about. It was something to text about. It was something that I could relate to other people about. Listening to companion podcasts, listening to the Popcast recaps of The Bachelorette and The Bachelor. It's really more of like a community experience. It's fun to watch with friends and drink a few glasses of wine. It's a little depressing to watch by yourself, but it's just something for the girls to do. What about you? When did you start watching?
Yeah, so similar experience. I remember, not that I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I do remember my cousins and aunts watching while we were on summer vacation every year. Like, I remember scenes of Bachelor in Paradise specifically. And I remember just making fun of them. I thought that was so stupid. It was trash TV. I was like, you're so embarrassing. I was right. I was correct. But in college, like you said, it was like such a communal thing. And I don't know why. My senior year of college, like you mentioned, we're both fans of the Popcast, and they were doing like a little preview of their recap. It was Ari Lyondike Jr.'s season, and
Famed,
I was
extremely
like,
boring race car driver.
yes. But that's how I got sucked in. And I feel like that's a great season to start with actually, because while Ari is incredibly boring and not interesting in any capacity, his cast is one of the best, I think,
Phenomenal.
ever. Like so many compelling women. And the ending was truly crazy. And so I feel like that was a great starter season for me. And I have only skipped one season since, which was what's his name? Clayton. I did not watch last season, but since then I've been all in on this show for sure.
Yes. And so while it seems on the surface to be pretty superficial, there are actually a lot of kind of dark corners of this franchise. There are lots of weird layers to this, interesting stories, and a lot of that was laid bare in the first book that we're going to discuss, Bachelor Nation by Amy Kaufman. So, Emily, do you want to set that up for the listeners?
Yeah, and I'll just do a brief overview of this one because I really think it sets the stage for our discussion on one to watch. So the book Bachelor Nation was written by Amy Kaufman, and Amy was a journalist, maybe still is a journalist for the LA Times, and she used to cover The Bachelor pretty extensively, the entire franchise, as a reporter. At some point, she wrote something a little bit critical of the show and was blacklisted from their media, calls and events, and kind of ends up writing this book. Using her connections, she is able to speak with a lot of former contestants, producers, people who worked on the show, and kind of just talk about the behind the scenes, the things you may not know about the show and how it's made, and some of the manipulation and things that go
Yeah.
into that. And so, but the first thing she really does is kind of go into the question of why do we watch this show? Why do people watch the show? And that's kind of what we were just talking about, like, why do we watch the show? But also, like, in this day and age where, women and gender roles are a little more progressive, why are we watching this kind of return to this era where all these women are competing for this one man and the dates are this fantasy element, like one of the parents said in the most recent season on Hometowns, he said, you could do all of this and fall in love with a monkey, because, it is kind of a fantasy. You're on these helicopter rides and you're eating in these cathedrals and it's not reality. And so, even though it's reality television, like, what is it? Like, is it the fantasy? She says, a quote from the book, a part of me, 32 years old, single, and tendering up a storm, wants to believe in the fantasy. Sometimes I even daydream about what it would be like if I were on the show. And I think there's definitely an element of that, so kind of what are your thoughts? Like, why is this such a popular show and continues to be, even, like you said, 25 years probably after the first season premiered?
That's a great question because I think for me, it's fun to watch to make fun of. It's fun to watch to enjoy the drama and to kind of check out. But I think it's really not as fun to watch alone. I really think it's something that's fun to watch with other people. And it's an experience that like brings others together. There are so many things about the show that make me so intensely angry
Yeah.
that I hate the way they handle them, that they don't use wisdom, that they aren't, you know, they have the worst intentions, pretty much.
Yeah.
But but I think it's fun to escape to.
Yeah.
And it's kind of also one of those things that's like, well, all these people kind of signed up for it knowing what they were getting into. Like, I don't know.
Definitely.
It's the community for me. That there's a huge community. Actually, they're called Bachelor Nation.
Yeah.
That intensely gets into it. There's so much media to consume. There's so many things to do. It's kind of like
Yeah.
following a sports team. Honestly, it's like this doesn't matter,
Right.
but it's like a hobby.
Yeah,
It's like
you've got
something
your
you enjoy
fantasy
doing.
bracket. Yeah, you follow the
Yeah,
contestants. It is very much like following a sports team. And
yeah,
I think what's
exactly.
interesting of like you're saying, like something she does talk about in the book is like when your friend goes on a fine date, like how boring is that? But if your friend goes on like the
Exactly.
worst date of their life or goes through a
Yes.
horrible breakup, you're like, let's go talk about it. I want to hear every single detail. Or maybe if it was an amazing fantasy date like one of these, you would want to hear the details as well. So I think it is part of that, like talking to your friends about it's something to talk about, like the fence jump before something crazy
Right.
that happens, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like on the topic of the fence jump, a few years ago, I had a group of friends that were getting together in Atlanta getting together every Monday night to watch The Bachelorette. And as anyone who watched Colton season knows, they teased this freaking fence jump every single episode until finally it was going to happen. And my friend got a cake from Publix that said "Happy Fence Jump," and we all passed out roses, and it was like the Super Bowl of
Yes.
The Bachelorette. Like, yes, it is just such a fun time for women to get together and like enjoy things and enjoy each other, even if it's in kind of for a really crappy reason, I guess.
Yeah, and something that, I mean, to go on that same topic, something, or off that same topic, I should say, like something that she kind of struggles with is like, after writing this book and after reading this book, which we'll talk even more about some of the things in the book that are a little more sinister, but after knowing, like you were talking about Colton, who did later, kind of have some issues with stalking his partner that he met on the show, some complicated and very bad behavior.
Resulting in a
But
restraining order.
yes, yes, I don't want to make light of that at all.
No.
And there's been lawsuits about racial diversity on the show. There are so many characters who are cast who are blatantly racist. You know, Garrett comes to mind. Like, there's no way they didn't know about those Instagram likes, you know? He
Right.
liked some really, truly awful things. And so, what is it that, for you, because obviously I still watch the show, you still watch the show. I mean, Mike Fleiss, the creator of the show, is notably a horrible person. Like, how do you keep watching the show knowing these things? And that's kind of how she ends the book. So kind of jumping ahead to that, her ending conclusion is like, how do we keep watching this show knowing how horrible it can be?
I mean, I really wish I had a noble answer for that. I think I wish I had a better answer. I don't think that there really is a good moral justification as a feminist for why I continue to enjoy this show. I think, and some people who are really into defending the show, like who truly believe that it is good, will say like, well, The Bachelorette is just the flip side, but it really isn't, because on The Bachelorette, when there's one bachelorette and then like 30 men vying for her attention, still somehow on that show, in that setting, the bachelorette ends up being the one who's vying for the men's attention.
That is so
And
true.
and I think that it has to do with producer manipulation. It has to do with the rules and the social contracts we have as a society. I wish that there was a good way to spin my love of this franchise, but it's just kind of one of those things that's like, if this is the worst thing I do, then I'm okay with it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
okay with enjoying this hellscape. I do enough for women. I'm I live my
Yeah.
life as a true feminist. And if this is my
This is
one
the one
thing,
blind spot.
I
Yeah.
guess here's my thing. And I feel like this also about the idea of getting married and taking my partner's last name. I kind of think like, for the feminists, maybe I shouldn't do that. I'm a feminist, but I'm also like, is that really what feminism is about?
Sure.
No, it's not. And there are bigger battles that need to be fought, and maybe I can just enjoy this show.
Absolutely.
We're on a
Great
floating
answer.
rock.
I totally agree.
We're on a floating
Um,
rock.
yeah. Sometimes you just like things and there's no good reason for it, or it's not the best. So the next topic I want to go into about her book is the producer manipulation. And so a lot, I think, that is common knowledge now was really revealed in her book. One notable thing she kind of goes into is frankenbiting, where they'll take, mismatched chunks of sentences and put them all together and make it sound like the person said something that they never said. Most notably, which I think about this all the time, and it is so stupid, but on Tasha's season, they made her say she was blindfolded. And you didn't actually see her say it, but the voiceover said, like, are we doing the Bird Box Challenge? And this was filmed before the movie Bird Box came out, which was about the blindfolded people or whatever. So there's no way she actually said Bird Box Challenge. because it was before the movie ever even was
Right.
released. So if they can make her say something that makes no logical sense, like there is no way to know unless you see the words coming out of someone's mouth what they actually said in that moment
Absolutely.
at all. You
And
know?
if I think a general rule of thumb for the show is like, if you hear something on a voiceover, it was recorded like a week before this episode came out in a studio in Burbank. Like
Absolutely.
it, this is not true to in the moment, and that's something that's talked about in both books. ITMs, the in the moment interviews, those are also like they're in the moment, quote unquote. You can't see my note for the audio. I'm making air quotes, but they could be from really any moment. They don't have to
Absolutely.
go with what's happening on the screen. So, yeah, it's a television show. It's a television show.
Yes. And it's not real. Even
It's
though it's
it isn't
reality,
real.
it's not real.
It isn't real.
The other thing she kind of talks about is like the producers really befriend the people they're working with a little bit, and they might let you feel like you're in control when you're really not. For example, one example she gives is like, hey, here's two options for your one-on-one date today. Who do you want to take? And they're going to be kind of urging you to pick someone that they know for a fact you're not compatible with. For example, he might, have some kind of opinion or be blatantly racist, as they did to Rachel Lindsay, the first Black Bachelorette. But they know something that you don't know. And we're going to do this video, and, you're going to have the voiceover of the guy, and later you might find out, like, hey, this guy is a horrible jerk, and you didn't know that. They were encouraging you to take him on the one-on-one date. And I definitely think we're going to talk about that more in One to Watch, of like, they do not have your best interests at heart. They're trying to make good TV.
Right. Or the producer might, like, for instance, something that happened on the currently airing season of The Bachelorette with Rachel and Gabby. So, Rachel shows up to Gabby's group date to hang out with Gabby, and her guys also show up to watch the wrestling or whatever. Like, her guys are doing some kind of physical competition, and Rachel is getting all pouty and sad because her guys aren't paying attention to her. But if you peel that layer back, and you think like, all right, how do I see this through like a producer lens? The producer physically separated them. Maybe a producer went over to that group of guys and said, hey, like, you'll have an opportunity to talk to Rachel later, but like, really, we need you to just stay focused on like the action here, stay focused on the group of guys who's wrestling. And then maybe someone went over to Rachel and said like, hey, it's kind of weird that the guys aren't hanging out with you, right? Like,
Yeah,
pulling the strings. They're just trying to make a TV show, but they want to make the contestant or the lead feel like they are truly friends, which is kind of gross.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is complicated. I mean, I listened to the podcast Chatty Broads, which has a former Bachelor contestant on it, Becca Martinez, and she talks about this, or she has talked about it before on that podcast, like, you feel like they are your friends. Like, she had some of them come to her baby shower, like some of the producers. But then it's like on the look back, sometimes it's like, how do you differentiate between like, they seem like your friends, you're talking to them and you're crying to them and you're telling them about some of the most horrible things that have happened to you in your life, and then, they're using that to make you look a certain way on TV. Like, it's very complicated.
And another thing to note is that none of these contestants on the show have access to their phones, communication with their loved ones, TV, internet, books. Like, they're allowed to bring like a religious book and a journal. So
Yeah,
they're living inside of a bubble, and they don't have their normal support systems to help them filter through like what's normal and what's not normal. So these producers do become like their friends because they're the only people that they're around that they aren't either competing against or dating.
and I think that definitely contributes a lot to the drama on the show. You're isolated and you don't, have anything else to do besides talk about this guy and think about him and go on dates with him and then talk about going on dates with him. And it's like, of course you're going to feel like you're having feelings for someone, if that's all you can physically do for
Yeah.
weeks on end. And then the last topic covered in this book is that I want to talk about is just the beauty standards and kind of the physical requirements. And so when Mike Fleiss started the show, he kind of did it with the argument that there was not enough sex appeal on television. He wants to see girls in bikinis on TV, and There was even one writer who witnessed him in the editing bay asking to see more sexy images of the female contestants. And so
Oh
he
God.
is definitely very focused on the beauty standards and how the girls look on TV. There's also a reference here to encouraging contestants to lose 10 pounds or so before coming on the show, and just encouraging them, not a big, no pressure, but you should lose 10 pounds before you come on the show. And I think it shows, like there, like you said, there is no body diversity. There isn't a lot of just diversity in any way. And so, it's very kind of enforced by the casting people. It's enforced from the top down. So, like, how do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on the beauty standards?
I mean, my initial reaction to that is like when it's saying like, oh, Mike Fleiss wants to see more sexy images on TV or sexy on TV. Like what is sexy to one person may not be sexy to another person. So I think it's just kind of like a total farce that like skinny or so like for women, thin, short, blonde, white women
Yeah.
are going to be the ideal, and for men, it's going to be tall, lean, fit, whatever. That's not really actually what's sexy to people. That's what's sexy in media. And I think and we'll get into this as really starting to be a great segue to set up our book, When to Watch,
Absolutely.
because I think there are a lot of people who are actually very much attracted to different body types. Obviously, many, like most of the people that are cast on this show are white. Obviously, like people are attracted to people who aren't white.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like this. They're just inserting this overall cultural narrative of what someone is supposed to be and assuming that's sexy. And I think they're missing a really big audience to sell to. Like just as a business decision,
Yeah.
it's stupid.
I totally agree. Something else that's mentioned is they just kind of have shorthand names for everyone. So some of the ones
Oh,
mentioned
God.
were Mom, Southern Belle, the cheerleader, the fat one, the hot one, the crier. And knowing the women on this
Oh,
show, the fact that anyone was referred to as the fat one is just bizarre. Like it just doesn't seem
pretty
accurate.
bizarre.
And so I think, it's very clear the attitude. This book, I really recommend it. If you're a fan of Bachelor Nation, the concept, I recommend reading The Bachelor Nation, the book, because I think it goes into a lot more detail beyond just what we've covered here today of kind of the culture of The Bachelor and how problematic it is. And so I think it's good to read. I think it's good to be aware of like what you're consuming. And so
I think, yeah, watch the show if you want, but consume responsibly.
yeah, and just know what it is. And
Yes.
demand for it to be better. I think, something we can talk about more, but like there is a campaign right now called Roses for Everybody on Instagram. I recommend going and checking them out. They're campaigning for more plus size representation on The Bachelor. I think that kind of pressure was somewhat successful in terms of racial diversity. We did see the first Black Bachelor. We have seen a little bit more casting diversity. I wouldn't say this season has been the best. So
Yeah.
tentative, but I think if you want to keep watching the show, that's cool, but let's also demand that it is better and try to like make it at least more representative of the people in America. So,
Yes. Drink responsibly. How about that?
yeah. Awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit then about When to Watch?
One to Watch is a fictional story by Katie Stamen London, who is a plus size author living in LA. It is a direct ripoff of the Bachelor franchise, but with some name changes. So, in this fictional world, Main Squeeze is the name of the show. They slightly changed the names of a lot of the key players. So, for instance, Mike Fleiss is named Micah Faust. Reality Steve, the famous gossip blogger, is Reality Stefan. And the network is called ABS instead of ABC. A couple other fun things. Instead of having a rose ceremony at the end of every episode, there's a kiss-off ceremony. But one of the main differences in this story, a big difference, is that the main squeeze this season is plus size fashion blogger B. Schumacher. So, the book kind of starts off with B, her kind of background as a plus size fashion blogger. She is in love with one of her friends who's coming out to visit her. They end up hooking up, but then he ghosts after that. He's engaged to a thin woman. Um, she reaches out via email a bunch of times. He never hits her back up. She's heartbroken. She gets drunk one night with her friend watching the main squeeze and writes a scathing blog post about ripping the show apart for lack of racial diversity, lack of body diversity. And she wakes up the next morning, and to realize she's gone viral. And her story's been picked up by multiple news outlets. Celebrities are tweeting about it. And shortly after that, she is reached out to by the new executive producer of the show, who requests that she become this season's main squeeze. So that kind of sets up her journey to find love on this show. And it's kind of giving us an opportunity to imagine a world where there would be a plus size bachelorette, how that might go given the current structure of the franchise. Maybe provides a cautionary tale and helps us think critically about, like, given the way things are set up, what would actually happen if we threw a plus size person into this role?
Sure.
Now, caveat, B decides to go on the show, not really to find love, mostly actually just to grow her brand. She's a fashion blogger. That's a reason really most people go on the show these days, to build her following, to kind of open new doors for herself. And that's the way that the executive producer, Lauren, pitches it to her as an opportunity. And so she agrees to go on the show. The producers are making big promises to her about how her career will launch, and she tells them, I want a diverse cast of guys. I want it to be racially diverse. I want size diversity. Emily, is that what she gets when she goes on the show?
Well, if you'd call, I believe in her, in her final, there is one black man who's thin. There's one Asian American man who is thin, and one plus size man.
And that's it.
That's it.
And so she also finds that, so as you referenced in the past, the Bachelor franchise has cast openly racist people to be contestants when there's a black lead. And in this book, they cast openly fatphobic people to be on her season to create drama.
Yes.
Which is traumatizing and abusive.
Yeah, and I think even like more subtly problematic is like on Rachel Lindsay's season, I've actually read her book as well, which is, side note, a great read. But she talks about how even some of the black men, because her season was super diverse, but even some of the black men cast had never dated a black woman before. And then there were also blatantly, openly racist people cast on her season. But I think we see that as well with B's, main squeeze season. There are men on the show, some diversity, but are any of them actually open to dating a plus size person? I mean, when they first walk out and are surprise introduced to her, they didn't even know she was going to be the lead. There are some very shocked reactions. Just some people who are genuinely shocked and trying to be nice. Some people who are being horrible. So, like,
yeah, and a guy who walks off when he sees
a guy who walks off, which was producer manipulated. Like, he was instructed to do that. So I think that's exactly what would happen if they did this in real life. I think this book captures it 100% accurately.
Yes, and so unfortunately for her, so as a plus size person myself, I'm imagining if I'm in this situation and all of these extremely chiseled, conventionally attractive, gorgeous supermodel athlete types come out, I'm going to start maybe feeling a little bit insecure because there's this, pervasive narrative in your life that, like, these are not the kind of men that are ever going to be attracted to you, and they're just pretending. If they seem to like you, they're just pretending. And
I think that's something that she really deals with in this book, is like, she has this thought that no one's going to be attracted to her. If anyone, maybe the guy who is plus size, maybe. But for the most part, none of these guys are really into her. And so I think that kind of makes it hard to read it sometimes, but it probably is an accurate portrayal of how, a lot of people feel. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out one of the contestants that she has the most physical connection to, Luke, who is a very handsome French chef, actually really is into her. Like, is physically attracted to her, is into her. And they have a conversation later in the book once, a little spoiler here, she ends up starting to develop feelings for several of the guys. And they have a conversation where she's saying, I just kind of don't trust your intentions. I'm trying to figure out what you're really doing here. And she says, maybe the fact that you wanted me from the beginning is the reason that I don't trust you. And I can totally understand that inclination of like, I'm expecting somebody to fall in love with my personality first, and then once they love the inside me, come around to really appreciate the outside me, instead of having this experience where someone is immediately attracted to my outside and is willing to show that and then falls in love with my inside. And
Yeah.
so I think I loved that perspective of like if we had a plus size bachelorette, for instance, what would be their experience believing that people were falling in love with them when in life they have only, many times, and we've seen people be attracted to us but hide that fact,
Yeah.
or maybe be ashamed, or just fetishize the fat body.
Sure.
Which is also what happens with at the beginning of the book with Bee and her friend Ray, who she's in love with. He is attracted to her, but he doesn't want to admit his feelings for her because he's embarrassed to be in
Yeah.
love with a fat woman,
Which is
that's just
awful.
so painful.
Yeah. It's
That's
horrible.
just so painful. And eventually, we see her journey. She comes around to this realization of like, she says, I don't need someone to look past my size. I need someone who'll see me and love me exactly who as I am.
Yeah.
Um, which she eventually gets to, but she has to, encounter some bumps in the road
Many
first.
bumps.
Many,
Many.
many bumps. So one of the bumps for me, actually, I wanted to pull out was when she ends up sending Lincoln, who is the one plus size man on the show. She sends him home, and it's just purely based on them not having a great, not even necessarily not having a great connection. She just doesn't want to live the life he wants to live.
Yeah.
Um, he wants to go back to like Missouri, I think it is, and like
Just have a
have barbecue
family,
and
have a chill life.
yeah, and she's like, I'm a fashion blogger in LA. That's my life. Anyways, he calls her a fat cow on TV and says that no one will ever love her.
Yeah. And says that all the men, like, confirms her worst fears. Like, all these other men are laughing at you behind your back. They're not serious. I was the only guy you could have a chance with, and now you're going to be embarrassed. Which is
Yeah.
horrible. And not true. Like, the guys who were left, I think, genuinely were led to believe had real feelings for her and were really attracted to her. So, not only is it just awful, but it's also not true. But it does confirm, like, her worst suspicions and fears for sure.
Yes, and I think I loved that the author put this in there, that Lincoln was the one to do that to her, because I think there's also this assumption, like as a fat woman, for instance, that the man you're going to end up with may also be fat, because then maybe that's what you're going to get. Like, is a conventionally attractive person ever going to be into me? And oftentimes it is like I have seen for myself and with friends who also reside in larger bodies, that often it is plus size men who project their self-hatred onto plus size women, and um, can be extremely, extremely ugly and evil and extremely hurtful. And that is, I thought that was kind of a true and authentic reaction, and maybe something that was based on our own experience. I don't know. I would be interested to find that out.
Yeah, it definitely felt true to life, that moment.
Yeah. So the impossible sometimes does happen on the show, and it did happen for Bee, and in a roundabout way. She did end up finding love with a contestant that she met on the show, Asher, who can you tell us a little bit about Asher? Set that up for those who haven't read the book.
Yes, Asher is an Asian American professor, college professor, single dad. Seems like a very kind guy. He's very reserved at first, I think because of being a father. He's nervous about how he'll be portrayed on TV. He has two kids, and one of them is kind of, I don't know, gender non-conforming, you would say, or just maybe has different interests than like just being a tomboy or a traditional masculine person, but he's very supportive of his child. So he seems like a super chill, open-minded dad guy, and he is the professor, as we said. He's divorced. His wife left him kind of dramatically and suddenly and wants nothing to do with her children. And so B does have to deal with a question which I think comes up a lot on the show of, do I want to be an instant mom? Do I want to be a stepmom to these kids? Are they even going to like me? And
And
also,
might
do
I
I want
add,
to...
without the opportunity to see how he lives his life every day.
Yes. And I
Hmm.
think also, do I want to drag this man through this experience if I'm not going to pick him because he has a family, and that's more of a consideration to think about than just these other guys who are just younger and single and don't have those same attachments. So I think she has is forced to like really take it seriously with him. But there is some misunderstandings along the way as well with their relationship, and because of his hesitance, um, due to his children, she kind of interprets that as hesitance towards her. And I think that's like another very interesting facet of this book is like he does something and she interprets it as a rejection. And in reality, he's just nervous, like he's just worried about his kids. But she, twice actually, there's two different instances where he makes a decision and to her she's like, well, he hates me because I'm fat. And in reality, he's really just thinking about his kids, or like he's just nervous. And so I think that is kind of an interesting layer of like she's looking at everything through this lens of no one's ever going to love me. And that's not where he was coming from at all.
Yeah. No, it's not where he never, that wasn't even really a consideration from him. He
Yeah,
was attracted to her for who she was, not in spite of her fatness, but because of everything that she is, which, that absolutely is the goal. I mean, that's something I've had to learn in my life, in my journey is like, I don't want to find someone who loves me just because I'm fat, because that's fetishizing. I don't want to find somebody who loves me in spite of me being fat, because that just sucks. I just want someone who loves me for who I am. And I think that was maybe hard for her to accept because that's maybe felt really rare in the character's life. But he's pulling back. She's trying to push forward. She ends up going out to meet his kids. She has a good connection with them. It's great. She meets them one time. Okay, only once. And apparently wins them over, I guess. And then he, in a dramatic fashion, ends up leaving at the end of the show, but then they reconnect afterward at the urging of his children. Do you think that's
yes.
realistic?
Um, I don't know. I have complicated feelings. I feel like even I reread this for the second time for this podcast, and the first time I obviously didn't know who she would choose. I think the author intentionally makes you think it could kind of go either way for a long time. And I think that might be part of the problem because I know people really do sometimes fall in love on this show, but the
It
amount of
happens. Yeah.
time they spend together is so little, which I know is always true, but in this particular instance, like the first date they have is good, but then it kind of ends on a horrible note, and then they kind of don't really talk again. And then there's like another misunderstanding where he's being like upset at her. And so like then they have to like sort through that. So that's like keeping track. Two out of the three times they've hung out has been like misunderstandings and then overcoming them.
And then
And then
he declines to go on the overnight date because he doesn't want his kids to see him like spending the night with somebody. But then he loses the chance to have the overnight date to talk with her.
exactly, which I think is key. Like, I understand, you know, in the Bachelor Nation book, she does kind of talk about people's experiences on those fantasy suite dates. And, a lot of people say, like, they don't even do anything physical on the dates. Like, it's just a chance to have basically 8 hours to talk without a camera, without a producer, without 100 people staring at you and microphones recording your every word. Like, I think that's kind of critical. Like, I almost think that is the moment that makes me find this not as believable as even The Bachelor, which is already not believable
Is that they
because
didn't have the overnight date.
they had no real time to actually talk to each other. And I find it odd that they did end up falling in love despite all of those many obstacles in their way.
So I'm just curious to know if you were on this show, you were either the Bachelorette or a contestant, what are maybe the top three questions that if you could only ask three questions in the overnight date with no cameras, what would you want to know?
That is a great question. That's interesting because I might be overthinking this, but like I think things like do you want kids or you know simple questions like that. Not that they're simple, but I feel like you can ask that in front of a camera. Like
Yeah, yeah, it's just like a yes or no.
to me, I find it very uncomfortable that anyone would actually open up about any actual experience in their life that's like difficult or traumatic or things like that. Like, so I think for me, I would be way more open without the cameras because I'm just not an open person in general, as you know. And so
Yeah.
I would think maybe not specific questions, but I don't think I would be the type of person who's like telling their most traumatizing life story on the one-on-one date. Like that would not be me. I would be like, I will tell you in the overnight, You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
just having more in-depth conversations about like who you are and like maybe things you're not as comfortable talking about on camera.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to know about politics. I would want to,
Yeah,
you can't talk about that on camera. I'd
that's
want to
true.
know
That's
about
true.
religion probably. And
Yeah.
like, also, would you move? Like, because none of these people live in the same place,
Yes.
really,
Asher
pretty
and
much.
B
So like,
notably live on opposite coasts.
yeah. So would you move? Where would you end up
Yeah.
moving if you did move? All that kind of stuff. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I think
deepest, darkest
logistics is a big
secrets,
thing.
whatever.
What I actually loved, I don't know if you've ever watched Jason Mesnick's season of The Bachelor.
I didn't know.
Okay, well, it was on Netflix, so I went back and watched it, and because he had a son, they actually filmed a lot of episodes in Seattle where he lived, and they did like dates at his actual house and like I
Oh,
feel like it facilitated a lot more conversations about, and because he had a son, he was like very upfront, like, I am not uprooting my son. So like you have to know this in advance. I live in Seattle. Would you be
you would
okay
be moving
moving
to
here?
Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think because of that key factor, and maybe that was the case with Asher, but he did end up moving. So, but they did kind of talk about logistics in the book. Um, so, anyways, I just think, yeah, the logistics conversation, I feel like it almost never happens, and it feels like the thing
At
that
least on
breaks people
camera.
up. Yeah, like I mean, Michelle and Nate from the most recent season, she went back and was in Minnesota or
She
wherever
was
she's
dead
from.
set on living in Minnesota. In Minnesota.
Which now she moved to LA, by the way.
She did?
Yeah, she just moved to LA. But he was living in Texas, she was living in Minnesota. It was like, did you guys ever talk about this? Like, I don't know. I feel like that breaks people up more often than not. So I think those are great questions to ask, the logistical stuff.
So given all of that, do we think that Asher and B would have stayed together?
I think the implication in the book is that they did
I know, but if this was
in
not in
real
the book,
life. Okay, barring the epilogue, I do not think they would have stayed together in real life. I think they had, maybe by a fluke, but I don't think they had any real conversations about that were depicted in the book about like who they were and what they believed and what their life was going to be like. I just don't think I think they had so many misunderstandings, which I guess obviously contributes to the plot, but that cut in so much to their actual time spent together. So I just don't
yeah.
believe in it. I'm sorry.
And she's uprooting from her entire support system.
Yeah,
The stress of becoming an instant mom.
yeah,
Eh, I mean, it could happen, I guess,
it
but
could. I
it's
also think
unlikely.
in real life, and this is a massive spoiler, but we've already spoiled who she picks at the end. Ray does come back and kind of tries to win her affections. I kind of think in real life she might have gone with Ray. Like, in that
That makes me
situation.
sad.
It makes me sad too, and I do like the fact that she has the growth, and I think that's shown well. Like she grows and learns that he's horrible. But like, I don't know. She was pining over him for so many years, and then a few weeks
That's
go
true.
by.
That doesn't just break.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think maybe she would have like given it more of a chance with Ray, blown things with Asher, and then her and Ray don't end up working out, but she lost Asher already, you know. That would be my real reality assumption.
Well,
What
do
do you
we
think?
think, and I mean, I don't, I tend to agree. I think it's possible they could have worked it out, but it's unlikely, and she may have gone back to Ray, or she may have just ended up single, or I don't know. But I do think one thing that maybe I think is consistent to what reality would be is that she would gain confidence from this, having
Sure.
like expanded her horizons, pushed herself out of her comfort zone, had the ability to meet a bunch of different guys, learn that she is desirable, learn what the difference between like, you know, learn that she can really have the whole thing and that she deserves to have everything she's ever wanted and she doesn't
Absolutely.
have to settle just because she's fat. And I think I totally want to cheer that on and celebrate that. Like she should get to have the career and the family and every single thing. A
Yeah.
hot guy who also has a great personality. Like you should think that your partner is the hottest person ever. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what size you are. So
Amen. I love that.
I love that. Well, so what are your final review and recommendation for each book? Let's start with Bachelor Nation. What do you think? How many stars?
Okay, I gave Bachelor Nation 4 stars. I think it was really well written, well researched. There's some like humor, like very funny moments. Like to me, she goes to some of the events of former contestants, which is
Yes,
just a
yes.
hilarious. Some of those adventures are so fun. So I think it's great. I think if you watch The Bachelor, you would love this book. It really goes into the behind the scenes. I feel like some stuff you know, but a lot of stuff you don't. And just it's just because she's a reporter, I think it's just well researched and well written, and I really enjoyed it.
I give mine I give mine 3.5. Just I'm a little bit more conservative with my stars, but I really liked it. I thought it was I thought she was able to get some really good interviews, really leverage her connections. Like you really get to see behind the curtain. Um, and I also felt like I learned a lot about Mike Fleiss and his origins, the origins of dating shows in general.
Absolutely.
And, that's stuff that we don't have time to cover now, but like pick up the book and read it because going from having like, Jeopardy being really the only competition show on TV to
Right.
Bachelor in Paradise, I mean, what a huge cultural shift and honestly not that much time. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, so yeah, I give 3.5 stars. I think I listened to it on audiobook, which I really liked. I thought it was a good listen.
And personally, I would love an updated version because I do think the producer
Yes,
manipulation since her book came out
has amped up.
has even more escalated even more. So I think I would love to hear 2022, like maybe a addendum or something. I would love to hear
Yeah.
more recent contestants talk.
And what about one for watch for you? How many stars do you give one to watch?
Originally I looked on my story graph. I did give it a 4 stars originally. I think on the reread I would give it more of a 3.5, 3.
Yeah.
Um, it was kind of a tough read. Like B really has some. I know that her character has like low self-esteem, but some of it was like, okay, like the way you are describing like plus size people or fat people in general is like kind of awful. And like, that's her, that's her character. But as a book that is trying to like do the what if, what would happen, like I wish she had more confidence in herself maybe earlier, just to be like, well, yeah, of course this guy's into me, like, I don't know. It was just kind of hard to read. And I do get it. That's like her character. And I think that's probably true to life. Like, I know I would probably not be a super confident lead on this show in general, but it was just kind of a difficult read at some parts for those
Yeah,
reasons.
no, I see what you're saying about that. Like, maybe what if we had a plus size bachelorette who was just like, I don't give a crap. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, whatever, don't like me, leave.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would agree. I think I would give One to Watch 3 stars. I really liked it a lot more, I think, on the first time. The second time around, um, I don't know why it was like a little less compelling the second time around, but it was good. It's quick. It's light. It would be a great vacation read. Like, I don't know.
absolutely.
3 stars sounds bad, but maybe it's more like 3.5. Like it was good. It was delightful. It
Yeah,
was fun. And if you like The Bachelor, you'll pick up on the inside jokes that she makes about the way that the show is run, the different names she gives people, the kind of dates that they go on, like the setting for everything. It will feel very familiar and fun, and
yeah,
you'll enjoy it.
totally agree. I listened to it on the plane ride to come visit you, and it was a great plane listen. So I think
Yeah.
your vacation read summary is perfect. Like, it was enjoyable. So.